We'll be joined by the CEO of the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe, NVCCZ, Mr. Tinotenda Kambasha, to tell us more about what this initiative entails. But first, we give you the exchange rates as of US dollar interbank was at 26.33 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the Great Britain pound interbank rate was at 32.78 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the euro interbank rate was at 27.48 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the South African rand interbank was at 0.71 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the Botswana pula interbank rate was at 1.89 ZiG. That's it for this segment. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome to the second segment of World of Business. As alluded to earlier, the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mthuli Ncube, recently presided over the launch of the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe, NVCCZ, a groundbreaking initiative aimed at fostering innovation, entrepreneurship.
Hi, Bruce.
Hello, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, and welcome to the listeners.
We are happy to have you here. How are you, Kevin?
We're good. We're excited. Now on the market officially.
All right.
And we look forward to assisting Zimbabweans.
That's great. We also look forward to what you're going to offer us.
Thank you.
So, to get us started, you recently launched the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe, NVCCZ. What does it entail and what can we expect from it?
So basically, the Ministry of Finance had a look at funding within this country. What we saw was a lot of innovation hubs are open at most institutions and polytechnics, and the president has done a fantastic job in pushing those innovation hubs. But the issue that we then saw was that there is no patient capital to come and assist to move the innovations from an idea to a commercial product. And that's the gap that we fill in. So it's a very exciting space to be in, because you see so many different types of projects and so many different types of Zimbabweans of different age. So it's an interesting space to be in, and we're looking forward to assisting a lot of young people.
Just for the layman out there, you mentioned something to do with patient capital.
Yeah.
Some of the guys who would be looking to get funding from you guys might not know what that means. What is patient capital? So
basically, if you were to go to a bank, you would go get a loan, qualify, give them some security, pay a huge interest rate on that, draw down fees and all of that. So what we are a more long-term view. So we naturally don't look at anything that is 3 years and below in terms of what we fund. And our type of funding is not debt funding, it's mostly equity, which means that we go into the company and become partners to the actual company. So we are actually there for the journey and growth of the businesses, rather than looking to milk them off cash flow. More or less,
that's interesting. So the NVCCZ serves as a vital initiative aimed at bridging the funding gap faced by startups and early stage businesses. What qualifies entrepreneurs for this type of funding, and how accessible is it?
Well, I'll start with the accessibility. If you actually go onto the website now, nvccz.com, you'll see that the first thing that's there is apply now. So we've made it very easy for people to apply.
I can actually apply as we're sitting here?
As we're sitting here, you can apply.
That's interesting.
So we've just given some parameters just to guide the applicants on the type of things that we look at. And there's some tick boxes as well. So you need a business plan. You need to have some sort of projections for your cash flows. And we need to know what ideas you are trying to bring. So you need to articulate what your business is. And we also have made it quite clear on the areas that we invest in and why we invest in these areas. So we look at multiple things, but amongst them, devolution. So our first 3 projects on purpose are not Harare projects. So we wanted to actually show our principles that we are looking at the bigger national goals. We do look at women and children. One of our investments is actually empowering a lot of women, especially in Honde Valley and in Wedza. That's solar-powered electric scooters, which is quite an exciting project. And then we also look, at sustainability, marginalized group, women and children, disabled. So it's a wide range, and we're not specifically looking at one sector. So it's not just ICT. When people hear innovation, they just think it's only purely to do with ICT.
It's interesting that you have a whole spectrum of issues that you want to attend to. But out of interest, what structures are in place to ensure funds are not misused?
Yeah.
And perhaps we also, and I'm sure all our viewers also want to know, if these funds are accounted for through independent audits and public reporting of progress.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be transparent. I think that's one of our pillars that we're going to be riding on, is transparency, and definitely setting up all the structures internally. So we will get a ERP system that manages everything internally, and then also an internal and external auditor. And the beauty about it and how we want to set up the funds is that when we do start making investments into specific areas, we are going to have the complete separation of what is being invested and under a nominee structure, so that also gives accountability for that, and an ability for an external partner who wants to partner up with us. So for example, if a pension fund wants to invest in hydro, in maybe a hydro project in Karibo or whatever, we can set up a specific fund for that. And then have them bring in their partners or people to sit on that board specifically for that.
So you're not merely focusing on budding entrepreneurs. You can also work with pension funds, like you're saying?
Yes, 100%. So the way we look at it, when we fund, we're not only going to be using state funds only, we want to also crowd in other investors as well to invest through us, to invest in these projects as well. So we will be working with not only just pension funds, we want to work with the international organizations like AfricZim, for example, CDC. We're looking forward to working with even the sister partners within SADC that are doing the same thing as us. We want to see how we can work with them. So yeah, we're pretty much open to working with anyone.
You know, there is a common belief in Zimbabwe that traditional lending mechanisms often relegate budding entrepreneurs to the periphery. What can we hope from this one?
So like you mentioned about the patient capital thing, I think that's quite the big thing. But we are looking at accelerating growth within the country. And if you look at what has happened in other countries, first world countries, the innovation space has been quite hectic. I mean, we talk about anything that you use, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, all that is coming through startups, right? But we're saying we want to do startups that are specific to our situations here in Zimbabwe. We're not trying to look at trying to come up with a Silicon Valley, which just doesn't make sense for us. What we need to do is to get our local homegrown solutions, our local homegrown innovations for our local issues and problems that we're solving for ourselves. So that's how we're a bit different. And we're not a bank, we're a partner as well. So there's none of that repayment issues that clients would worry about. We're working with them to grow their businesses.
That's interesting. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and have a conversation with us.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you for having us.
That was it for our discussion. Join us in the last segment as we take a look at our Entrepreneur of the Week. Welcome to the final segment of World of Business, where we put the spotlight on our Entrepreneur of the Week. This week, the World of Business team spoke to Mr. Prince Kudzai Hwenjere, a local entrepreneur majoring in energy trading, to give us an insight on the launch of the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe. Let us hear more from Cellah Marere as she speaks to Mr. Hwenjere.
This is the third and final segment of this week's edition of World of Business, where I'm joined by the founder and managing director of one of the companies dealing in energy here in Zimbabwe, Mr. Prince Kudzai Hwenjere, who is going to tell us more about the role that the recently launched National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe is going to play in supporting startups, entrepreneurs, and also...
I'm Prince Hwenjere, born and bred in Zimbabwe, entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, of course, if you look at the recent launch of the National Venture Capital Company, it is quite a noble idea if you look at the startups that we have in Zimbabwe. If you are to reflect back, you'd see that the most prevalent source of funding in Zimbabwe has always been the loans from banks. But if you look at here, we are talking of a startup. Of course, who do not qualify a loan from banks because they don't have all the prerequisites. So if you look at the National Venture Company, it comes in to bridge that gap, the gap that we have. it comes in to lessen the requirements that are needed when you are looking for funding to start your business. And why I also believe that it is the right funding for startups is the fact that it comes in as an equity funding option. And unlike a loan which you are expected to start paying interest next month and principal amount in the next month as well, here you are only going to pay the dividend when companies start to perform. So therefore it means that this is a very patient money, which is very good for a startup. It allows you to grow, and then from there you are able to start paying the dividend.
Okay, I think that was nicely put across, and I'm sure we have come to understand what this initiative is really about and how this is going to help even startups. Have we had initiatives like this before in Zimbabwe? If so, how did they come up? Did they fail? Did they succeed? What was lacking and what could be different this time around?
Thank you very much for that question. You'll find out that yes, of course, we had these initiatives before. If you may recall, in the 2011-2012 era, we had the National Youth Empowerment Fund. That was meant to fund the youth startups. And though this was enrolled through banks, you'd find out that it didn't really go well. Law of finance or of business, rather I can say, is only one. If you don't qualify for a loan and you get it, surely you will not be qualified to repay it back. So that was the reason why that fund really didn't do well. Incubation becomes very important. So if you look at the National Venture Capital Company, it comes in with an element of incubation, which I believe that it is a very noble idea that they train, they fund, they incubate, they help these companies, these small startups to become, to grow from small to medium to large enterprises.
Okay, so this initiative is meant to also foster the spirit of entrepreneurship in Zimbabwe. I mean, it's clear because if you have a government that is supporting startups and business, it means they are standing on business. Like if you look at the principles forming the National Development Strategy, it emphasizes on creating even students that are more hands-on and that are meant to industrialize, to innovate, the Education 5.0. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe starting from the grassroots levels, the school? Are they embracing this model very well? And what more could be done to have more people hands-on and helping to build the nation of Zimbabwe, creating employment?
Just start from wherever you are. Remember, it's not about how much you have. It's just about what you do with what you have. So if you are able to sell mangoes at whatever level you are, do that. I would just give an example for myself. I remember in primary, I was good at selling mangoes. I would sell mangoes in primary, but as I went to high school, I started selling sweets. But that's how you are able to progress. So work with what you have and do the best. And my advice as well to parents is that it is very good to recognize your skill, the skill of your child at a very early stage. I know some people, they feel entrepreneurship is an inborn trait or something that you develop, but whichever the way, it needs to be developed.
So you don't think you necessarily need a particular skill for you to be able to start a business?
I don't really think
it's
so.
The mindset.
I think it's just about the mindset, whether you're born as an entrepreneur or whether you are made to become an entrepreneur. You know, what's important about entrepreneurship, it has to be grown.
So speaking of entrepreneurship, and you as an entrepreneur in the energy sector, and you have acquired a lot of skill over the years, what would you say would expedite the process of improving the performance in the energy sector, and also what could be done to reduce the level of imports that are trickling into the country? What could be done for us to be able to produce our own gas, our own yes, what can we do?
Yes, in terms of the energy industry, you might think that There have been so much improvement in the industry. You see, even the electricity availability, it has really improved, which really signifies a step that we have taken as a country to improve on the energy sector. Also, even if you reflect on the petroleum industry alone, you would see that we used to have queues. We used to sleep in a queue. For you to travel, you had to sleep in the queue. But those queues are long gone. So really, those are real improvements that we have seen in our industry. But if you are to look at how to substitute importation, yes, which is a noble idea. Right now, as you might have seen, that we start to see the government. We have started seeing the government really encouraging people to import electric cars, which by that virtue that we will not use so much petroleum fuels to power our engines, and one of the best way that we can also substitute importation is making use of the Muzarabani oils that have been discovered there. That is very important, and it can also help to substitute that. Also, if you might be aware that we have got coalbed methane lying in the Lupane Wange area, which can be converted to substitute the LPG that you were talking about. But of course, this requires a very huge sum of investment for such kind of harnessing and conversions to be done. But it is possible, and it can be done.
Okay. I mean, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've got entrepreneurs like you that are working towards that. But also now looking at the issue of you distributing and importing gas, and also looking at your experience in the sector, what opportunities lie ahead for Zimbabwe as a country?
So I would say to you that, the mandate that we have as the energy industry is to have access or to drive access to smart energy. It is our ambition that every household, every human person, every family, they've got access to smart energy. Mm-hmm. Days are long gone when even your mom in the rural area or your grandma in the rural area should be using charcoal, firewood, for them to cook. Remember, those have got a lot of health hazards that they carry. So we really feel that opportunity really lies on the fact that we still have more than 55% today of households which are still using, I can say, dirty sources of fuels. And as an industry, we need to change it. It's not only in the LPG industry, not only in the petroleum industry, but even if you look in fuel, for example, we are looking at some of the cars we still have millions of cars which are burning diesels, petrol every single day. How can we reduce that and have our smart energy agenda?
Okay. Yeah. So maybe lastly, while we are acknowledging the efforts of the government in trying to drive this whole smart energy mantra, what other recommendations can you pass to the government in as much as continuing to foster the spirit of entrepreneurship in Zimbabwe is concerned?
Small businesses and large businesses should be able to coexist. Formal businesses and informal businesses should be able to coexist. Zimbabwe is not the first country to have informal industry. It's not the first country to have small businesses. But despite the fact that you are informal or formal, there has to be something called compliance. Sometimes some people, they fail to pay tax, for example, But if an informal business fails to pay tax, and then there's a formal business which is paying tax, there's some kind of disadvantage being given to the formal business. So, but if the government comes in, like what it's doing right now, the government is pushing a lot in compliance, making sure that both formal and informal businesses, they are paying taxes. What it does is that it also encourages the small business to say, I should aspire to become a bigger business. Mm-hmm. Not to say, I want to keep on being a small business because I'm hiding away from taxes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hwenjere. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but it has been quite an insightful conversation and looking forward to more of this in future. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Cellah. I really appreciate it.
That's the conversation we're having today with the founder and managing director of one of the companies that deal in energy here in Zimbabwe, where we were discussing the role that the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe is going to play in the support and funding of startups in Zimbabwe. He also mentioned the need for young people, especially the youth, as they are the future of Zimbabwe, the need for them to venture into entrepreneurship. Be sure to join us again next week. It's back to the studio.
That's it from this week's serving of World of Business. Until next time, pleasant